Joining me now is Mr. Paul Hirschson. He is the spokesperson of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Paul, welcome to WION.
Thank you. Lovely to be with you.
How do you describe the situation on the ground right now?
Not one that we would like to be in. We've just had about an hour and a half ago, another 100 rockets launched at Tel Aviv. So there's a lot of tension. We just came out of a pandemic. Restaurants opened, everybody went back to school. I know that you in India are suffering the same experience with the COVID pandemic at the moment. And we thought that we were looking forward and suddenly found ourselves in the middle of a military conflict we didn't want to be in.
Israel's opposition leader, Yair Lapid, has described the situation, and I'm quoting, a complete loss of control. Do you agree with this assessment?
Well, I don't want to get involved in the internal political issues in Israel. That we've just had an election and the different political parties are still sort of shuffling around amongst themselves to form a government and a coalition. I don't think that it's the case. I'm not sure whether what he was talking about is whether he's referring to the conflict with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, or whether he's referring to some really difficult tension between Jews and Arabs, Israeli citizens. There is an appearance of a lack of control on the latter, but on the big issue, which is really taking up everybody's attention here in Israel today, which is the attack from Hamas and a number of other groups, I don't think that there's a loss of control at all.
It started with violence around the Al-Aqsa Mosque, then there were rocket attacks, and now reports of ethnic clashes. Why do you think it escalated so quickly, and is Israel then heading towards a full-blown war?
That is an excellent question, because I'm a graduate of a number of our previous military conflicts, and the escalation has not been this quick in the past. I think it's too early for us to really do the analysis why it escalated so quickly. We're still right in the midst of it for me to be able to say to you how or why it escalated so quickly. But it escalated very quickly, almost to the degree when I get the feeling perhaps that from the point of view of Hamas, this was choreographed. But I may not be correct on that.
What do you make of the international reaction to what's happening in Israel? Some of your friends and your allies have also said that the onus lies, or Israel should de-escalate, essentially.
We've heard mixed messages from around the world, a lot of support from our friends. And yes, we've heard the messages about de-escalating. But I'll tell you the truth of the matter is that, we're in the first 48 hours, and I'm not sure that we didn't want to be in this conflict, and we don't want to be in this conflict. But having been dragged into it, we're not in the mood to put a plaster on this issue once again. I think that the issue of a huge terror mechanism which has taken over control of the Gaza Strip, the Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and a few other groups, is a military infrastructure which needs to be dismantled.
The criticism against your government is that you pushed with this very tough settlement policy, and that essentially pushed the Palestinians or some of the Arabs to the brink, and this is the reaction of that.
Look, I know the conversation about the Israeli settlements, the Israeli villages in the West Bank. So two things. First of all, we're talking of something between 2 and 3% of the entire land of the West Bank, which hasn't actually grown physically. There have been more people, but not more land in the last 15, 20 years. So I don't really think that holds water. But the real issue is that we redeployed out of the Gaza Strip in 2005. We pulled out all of the Israelis who were living there. There are no settlements in the Gaza Strip. There have been no settlements in the Gaza Strip, Israeli settlements, since 2005 whatsoever. We were hoping they would build Dubai on the Mediterranean coast. And instead of that, two things happened. The one is that they took all of the international aid money that they got and they poured it into building a terror infrastructure rather than schools and hospitals. And the other thing that happened, instead of them building Dubai on the Mediterranean coast, Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, so fed up with them, established diplomatic relations and partnership with us.
I was going to come to that, in fact. How do you think this conflict, and we've seen statements from the UAE, we've seen statements from Saudi Arabia, Morocco and others. How will this conflict impact your newly normalized ties with some of your Arab neighbors?
It remains to be seen. It's a very important question. I think both of us, I happen to have by chance been one of the people who was deeply involved in building the relationship. I lived in the Gulf, in the Emirates for 3 years, many years back. It's a very important relationship to both sides, and this is an obstacle. This is an issue because the Emirates has a deep interest in developing its relationship with Israel, and it has a very deep tie to the Palestinian people. So we're all working very hard to make sure that we get through this, and I think there will be a lot of pressure from the Emirates on Hamas. I think that they're quite somewhere between distressed and horrified with Hamas's behavior the last few days.
What have you heard from New Delhi, and what are your expectations from India?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to start off by sending my personal condolences to the family of Suma Santash, the Indian woman who all she was trying to do was earn a living here in Israel and was killed by a Hamas rocket this week. On my behalf and on behalf of the people in the state of Israel, I would like to send my condolences to her family and to the Indian people. I'm not an expert on the bilateral relationship between India and Israel. I know that we have a very warm, a strong relationship which has been growing rapidly over the years in a number of different areas. Again, this conflict escalated so quickly that I don't think that any of us are in a position yet to say, well, this has been the ramification, even on side issues, not directly on the issues between Israel and the Palestinians, but our relationship with India or others. I know that the relationship with India is a very strong one, and this is not an issue which is going to fundamentally impact the warmth of, not only warmth, but more than that, of our relationship.
Both sides are being impacted by the violence. There are casualties on both sides. Do you believe this could have been prevented? And do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu's strong words and rhetoric is adding fuel to this fire?
Firstly, I absolutely think this could have been avoided. There was no military conflict underway between ourselves and the Hamas for the last 2 years. And partially, to be fair, partially because of the COVID pandemic, I think had imposed on all of us the need to address internal issues. And had they not opened fire out of the blue, hundreds of rockets, we're now talking about over 1,500 rockets throughout Israel, this simply wouldn't have happened. So absolutely, it could have been avoided. It should have been avoided. And we don't particularly want to be in this conflict. But when you talk about, I don't know if rhetoric is the correct word, but harsh words, I may even add to those harsh words because, and I think I did already say, we're not in the mood to put a plaster on this issue once again. I think that, the senior leadership of Hamas is embedded deep underground right now. But I think we need to ensure that whenever it is that they emerge from underground, that they come up and they see and understand that they made a very serious mistake. It's not tolerable that a non-state actor, a very seriously armed terror organization, can violate the sovereignty of any country in the world. And that anybody would expect us to sit back and not respond. We will do everything we can to dismantle the terror infrastructure. I can tell you that the estimates right now are that in the last 2 days, about 25% of their ability to launch rockets into Israel has now been eroded. We're expecting that to go up to about 50% of their infrastructure within the coming days, and we'll see how this plays out from here.
From where I am, Paul, I can only say that we hope to see a resolution and we hope to see peace sooner rather than later. Thank you very much for speaking with us. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those words.